Hello and welcome back to the Red Lantern. I'm Sarah. I can't believe that I am doing this, a podcast. Everybody has a podcast, it seems. Everybody has a platform. This is none of that for me. For me, this is my life. This is how I am living with grief. This is how I'm processing it. This is how I'm going to figure it out. This microphone that I am talking into is for me because I don't have Dan here to process this with. And in a way, this is me talking to Dan. This is me screaming out into the universe that I miss you. I have to verbally process things. That's just how I am. I'm a very verbal person. And poor Dan. Poor sweet Dan. He had patience, man. That man had patience. And he literally would listen to me say things over and over until I figured it out. I miss his guidance so badly. There are just no words. There are no words to describe how much I miss him and how much he gave to me. When you have a marriage and none of them are perfect, you work together for the betterment of your relationship and each other and your family. And you just keep working and working and working at it. And there are a lot of highs and a lot of lows in marriages. When you're married for a long time or a short time, you are going to be faced with difficulties. You're two different people living together trying to figure out how to live as one, and you both have different ideas and different emotions, and you both see things differently. And you're going to have new experiences and confrontations all the time. That's just the reality of life. You just keep doing these things over and over and over, and sometimes it's really crappy, and sometimes you're never gonna get out of it, you think, and you don't know why you're doing this and what's the point, and you can't get that other person to see your side. And then something happens, and you start going up that roller coaster, and you think, "Wow, we made that. We were really low, and we made it out of that nosedive." I I'm so grateful that Dan and I were on a really big high. We hadn't had any big lows for so many years. And then on the other side of that coin, it kinda makes me sad that we did end up on a high note because it makes my grieving more difficult because he and I had worked so hard to become such great companions through this life together. We had really just developed a deep appreciation for each other. And it's not something that we're just working at to achieve a better relationship. It was working at our marriage for the sake of our marriage and for the sake of each other. And so we had developed a deep understanding for each other. I don't have that person here now. I don't have him to help me process these things. I was just thinking how tired I am of doing the darn dishes. Dan did the dishes every night. He didn't always do that in our marriage. It took me a really long time to get him to understand that I needed help with the dishes. It was just something that he didn't get. He would get the kids to do it, which is fine, but there's something about knowing that you've also the other person has some skin in the game. And so he did that for me, and that was such a huge relief for me. And I know he saw that, and I think he thought, "Why the heck didn't I do this sooner?" And I miss that peace that I had with him. He saw me. He accepted me. I accepted him. I saw him. I saw who he was. I say that in grief, you have to downshift. And I don't know how long I'll find out because I'm going to be living with this grief until I die. But in living with grief, you have to downshift for a time period. I am very aware that when I say downshift right now, it's not something I'm going to have to do in 10 years. But I think with grief and you lost your spouse and you're raising a child, or if you've lost a child and you have other children, or you've lost a parent. When we lose somebody we love, there is an adjustment period. And I think that depending upon that loss, it depends on how long that adjustment period is going to be. And so I lost my husband, and I know that that adjustment period is going to be years upon years. And that downshift for me is really realizing that I cannot get it all done. I did get it all done before Dan died. And of course, a lot of things went on my next day's to-do list, but I could continue to crack along and get it going. And I had time to work on hobbies. I had time to paint the walls. I had time to exercise. I had time to homeschool. I had time to volunteer. I had time to make dinners, big dinners for my family and friends and have parties and on and on and on. And I don't have the time and I can't get to it and I'm not living my life at the level I would want to be. And I have to give myself grace there. My dishes are not always done. And my kids help, but sometimes I'm too tired to remind the kids to do them. And that's okay. It's not perfect. It's not what I want, but it's where I am at. So those are the downshifts that I am talking about. I'm just not going to achieve the things that I was achieving before Dan died. Since I've had this massive downshift in my life, my spiritual life has had, I don't know, is it called an upshift? I don't know what it's called, but it has shifted and not down, it's shifted up. I've been a believer my whole life. I think my spirit's always been light and full of joy. And maybe because of that, it's been easy to be of the faith. I was and am to a large degree still filled with joy. But there was one time in my life that I didn't think God existed, and it's after my mom died. And what's wild about that is that I did have a lot of spiritual connections when my mom died, with my mom, with God. And I still was convinced that there was nothing there, that we were just gonna die and that was it. And I was angry. I was really, really angry when my mom died. That was my first big loss. And I eventually came back around. I realized that there is God, and I may not understand it, but He's there. And that's where I was back in 2007. And so over the time since then, my faith has gotten deeper. Had I not gone through what I went through with my mom and the doubt and the anger that I had then, I would be in a really terrible place right now, losing Dan the way that we lost him. Because even when you lose somebody and you have faith, it doesn't make it easy. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's also lost a husband, and she said that she's never been the widow that could say, "Oh, I know he's in a better place and he's happy." And she said that I know people that talk that way, but I've never been that way. And I got her. I told her I get that. I have not been able to really look that in the face and say, God, Dan is in heaven, and I'm happy about it. My priest came over for a dinner one night after Dan died, and Father John saw my suffering, and he was trying to gently redirect me to thinking more positively. And he point blank asked me, "Where is Dan? Where do you think he is?" And I couldn't say it. Couldn't say it. It was so painful because it was me admitting that Dan is no longer here. And sometimes I get angry because I want to be with Dan. I don't like being away from Dan. He's my best friend. golly, I mean, he just was so much fun. Somebody, I don't know what they're called when somebody dies and you can get access to the obituary that the family has printed in the newspaper, and people can leave remarks. And I was reading some of the comments that were left, and there was one fellow from my husband's high school. I don't know who he is. And he said something that when I read it, I thought, oh, he got my husband. He said Dan could make even running track in the heat fun. And that was Dan in a nutshell. And what a gift he gave to people. And what's funny also about Dan is that he was able to make any situation fun, but he always wanted to grow in every area of his life. And that's hard to do. People resist work, but Dan embraced it, and he made that embracing fun. I miss it. I need it. I need that. And I guess I'm becoming more aware that, yes, Dan's not here anymore with me physically, but I can continue to carry on what he taught me. And so I've had this upshift of my faith. It has deepened so much. I live in a different place than other people. I think widows probably do, or people who have lost a child. I know after I lost my mom, I lived in a very different place spiritually for a while. And that's when I was having those gifts from God where I would have interaction with my mother. He allowed these things to happen. And I haven't had that with Dan, but I know God is there. When our first prosecutor was in charge of the case, this is hard for me to say, but he said Dan did not suffer. And I'm putting aside how the delivery was given to me, putting aside my feelings there, it broke my heart because I just know Dan died a really bad death. All that prosecutor did was prove it to me. And I went to Mass pretty much right after I got off the phone with this prosecutor, and I was so devastated. When somebody dies violently, I think the family and friends, they have to process what happened to that person. It takes a really long time. And I went to Mass and received the Eucharist. I went back to the pew and I'm kneeling, and I don't think I was praying. I was thinking about Dan and what the prosecutor told me. And right in my gut, in the clearest voice I've ever heard, God said it was only his earthly body. I don't talk like that. I wouldn't have called it Dan's earthly body. I have not had dreams of Dan that are good. They've all been really traumatic. I had really great dreams of my mom, and we talked. She and I talked, and she and I were able to hug, and that was a big gift. But I have had none of that with Dan, but my kids have, and my children have shared with me their visits that God has given them. And man, they're powerful. And I hang on to those. Even though they weren't my dreams, I know it was God talking to these kids. When I give up my pride and allow people to help me, I see how many good people God has put in my life and in my children's lives. And so at this very moment, in processing this aloud and hearing what I'm saying, I can say that I am happy that Dan is where he is, that Dan is with God, but I want to be with him. I don't want to be apart from him. For me, losing Dan the way that we did, I was walking in a shadow for so long where I felt part of me was with Dan and part of me was here, and I didn't belong either place. And I think through time realizing, well, I'm here and I'm staying here until it's my time to go. I got to figure this out. I have to accept it. And what a gift I'm being given. What a gift I'm being given, trying to figure it out. And I know others who don't believe think, oh my gosh, what a fool. But there's such beauty in surrendering and just saying, I can't figure it out. I don't know what's going on in my life. I don't know what my next step's going to be. I don't know where I need to go. And I need you to tell me. And I often say to God, you've told me you're going to do this, so you better do it. You've told me you're not going to leave me. You've told me you're not going to abandon me. And so you better not. It's really easy to think that there are a lot of bad people and that everybody's a bad person when tragedy hits you like this, when somebody kills your loved one and doesn't care. You see a different side of humanity. And that can definitely bleed into every day. I am more aware that not everybody's nice. I used to think everybody was nice. And they're not. And I realized that that's just a fact of life. I was 49 when my husband was killed, so I learned that late in life. I would often say to Dan, why are people so mean? Well, I know now, and I've learned that lesson. What am I? I'm middle-aged. I can't believe I'm middle-aged, but yeah, I've learned that lesson when I was in my middle age. And there's relief in that for me because I don't spin my wheels thinking, why? Now I just accept it. And maybe that has to do with being in this type of grief. You just have to accept where you're at. You can't fight it. I want to start improving in my life now. So that's a good thing. And I don't know why grief has to be so hard, but it is. And it really has affected, and it does affect everything in my life and in every other person's life that has to go through it. And I'm really grateful that my faith has been deepened and strengthened. Even though sometimes I don't understand it still, I still don't understand why it has to be so hard. When God knows everything anyways, if he knows I'm so dumb and I'm not going to get these certain things, why do I have to keep working at it? But I want to keep working at it. Dan was the sole provider for our family. We lived on one income for 26 years. He had the health insurance and he had the salary. And of course, Dan would tell me that his money was my money. It wasn't his money. He was such a good man. And what's really creepy to me is that several years before Dan died, I told him, I know I'm going to have to get a job. I know I'm going to have to get a job. And I would start looking, and he was always like, why do you need to go get a job? I mean, if you want to, that's one thing, but you don't need to, because Dan made enough for us to live very comfortably on. We were not rich, but we were very comfortable. And I just knew I was going to have to get a job. So when Dan was killed, it really freaked me out recalling those conversations I had with Dan and on all those thoughts that I had before he died. And I know that was intuition. And that's something that runs in my mom's side of the family, is this kind of crazy intuition like that. And I think, wow, I'm kicking myself because I should have been better prepared, right? But of course I wasn't thinking Dan was going to die. A worst case scenario, I was thinking if he just lost his job, right? And that would have been fine. He and I would have worked it out. Nobody's job is secure. I think everybody has these thoughts every now and again. But I didn't know I'd have to get a job because my husband was going to have been killed. And I was freaking out months after Dan died because I need to get a job. And one of Dan's cycle buddies gave me a job. And it was a nice job. It was out of the home, and I was doing it part-time. But it was taking a toll on my kids because it was just such a change from their life and my life with them. It was really disruptive. And so I had to stop working there. And I'm thinking, what, Lord, do you want me to do? And I'm being guided, but I don't see the path. My son, my sweet son, again, my minor children are blowing me away with their maturity. I'll go back a little bit. I have been a stay-at-home mom for 26 years. However, I had a side gig for many, many years. I made soaps and bath products, and I was pretty successful at it. In fact, Dan quit his job to pursue this with me. And we did this for many years, he and I, and we sold our products to grocery stores and to boutiques around the country. And we were trying to get into some department stores. It was very challenging, but it had potential. And then my mom died, and I thought, I'm not doing this anymore because it's a lot of work, and it took me away from my kids. And so I'm going back to that now. I think that's really interesting that we kind of, I hate that expression, circle back around, but it is true. I am circling back to what I knew. So I think, oh, is that what I need to do, God? And I was talking to my minor son about this silly little podcast. And that I feel very foolish, but I feel so pulled to do it because I need to talk. I need to process verbally what I'm going through. And my older daughter has often asked me to record stories like in this format for her. And she was speaking more of my sister and I sharing our childhood stories and record them because they're pretty darn funny. And she wants to have record, not just memory of them. And so I thought I ordered this microphone just a few months after Dan died, and I just started to talk into it. And of course I write, I journal, and it's not enough because I don't have Dan here to help me process it. So I kind of spin in many directions trying to work this out, work this grief out, work the loss out, and face the reality. And I was speaking to my minor son one day. I told him I'm really frustrated because one, this is humiliating in a way. I guess some people could look at it, oh, it's humiliating. I feel, she's humiliating herself speaking about this. But why do I feel pulled to do it? I want to do this. I need to do this. But where is it going to take me? And my son said, Mom, say that you want to run a marathon. You're not just going to wake up the next day and be able to do it. God's going to give you the tennis shoes and you have to put in the hard work. I said, did you hear that from YouTube? He told me no. But he's right. And so that's where this episode is focused right here, is that here I am because I need to do it, because it's good for me. If nothing else, this is so good for me. And so people may not call and people may not email me to say that they want to talk with me. That's okay. When you're young and you get married, or you're young and you graduate college, or you're young and you graduate high school, you have this excitement in your belly for the future. You have an energy and you're looking forward to what and how your life is going to unfold. And when I look at my predicament and I surrender this and I put my ego aside and my desires aside, I have that excitement in my belly that I'm going to end up where God wants me to be, and that's ultimately where I'm going to be the happiest. I have felt, especially early on in the grief, I felt like a block of clay that God was digging his fingers in and reshaping. It hurt. In a lot of ways, I died along with Dan.
And I'm excited to find out what that purpose is. Even though I'm not happy about it, I just don't have a choice. So I can fight all day long and just be angry. Or I can try to be positive and say, yeah, this is a really crappy situation to be in, because it is. It's terrible. And I can look towards the future and look for a way out of this. And I choose the latter. If you would like to share part of your journey with grief on this podcast, please email me at theredlanternpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to leave a voice message about your loved one, something you care to share about how you feel about them, what you miss about them, please call 682-231-1984. So, until we meet again, keep living until you feel alive.